Good afternoon. Well, today was a neat surprise. You know, I told you guys in a video I made less than a week ago about my first visit to a urologist and what a disaster that was. I thought it would be at least a month before I got to see another urologist, but yesterday a local urologist called me, which means that my doctor went ahead and did what I left a message for them to do and passed on the information to the right people, and they contacted me within a day of that. So, or within a day, because with the holiday, the weekend, they've only had 3 days, so they got back in touch with me pretty darn quick. A surprising amount of efficiency considering today's normal way things go. Not only were they able to call me back quickly and get that set up, but they said that they could see me today. I've already been in for the appointment, and boy, what a difference. What a difference from 1 week to the next. One urologist to another. Really, I saw the nurse practitioner, so that might be why I got somebody who actually treated me with some dignity. But honestly, before I even get to the nurse practitioner I saw, right when I walked in the door, there was an immediate difference. First of all, the urology clinic I went to last week was filled to the brim. The waiting room was full, the line to the receptionist was full, and one thing I could not stand, especially in that circumstance, was the fact that the receptionist would ask you personal questions that you had to answer in the full hearing range of everybody in the room. That to me sets up a good sign right there that they already don't care about your dignity right when you come in the door. That might have been the case at this place had it been full, but the questions that she asked were not invasive. She simply asked for my insurance card and the paperwork that I had already filled out and my driver's license, and she did all the work from there. She didn't ask me about my vaccination status, which I thought was an overstep on the part of the previous clinic. Respect for the patient, respect for their privacy, respect for things that probably don't really matter when it comes to getting your urology visit done. So we were off to a good start right at the beginning. The first place I went to, they made me wait in the waiting room until they called me and then gave me a cup to go fill before they would measure my bladder. Well, this place, they gave me the cup right there at the reception desk and said, go ahead and go down to the bathroom and fill it and leave it there, and then come back to the waiting room. And then I wasn't in the waiting room but a few minutes even after that when the nurse came to bring me back. And of course she checked my weight and my O2 and my vitals and whatever else they have to check, and then she did the scan on my bladder. This time my bladder had 124 milliliters in it, which I was happy to hear because it was better than the 383 they showed in there last time. But to be honest with you, I'm a little dubious about the number they gave me. Like, I felt like they enlarged it, not just because of the way the doctor acted, but also because the way the nurse acted at the first place. Just a little peculiar, something strange about it. Shifty, don't know how to describe. But in retrospect, it just seemed a little off. But either way, the number was a little bit lower, but it was still a problem. I mean, it was enough to where they said it shouldn't be that full right after having voided. You know, I'd love to be able to say that the credit of going from 383 to 124 was the timed double voiding that I've been practicing, but I don't think you can get much done in just a few days. So I'm gonna say that maybe something was wrong with the number that was checked at the first place. Even though I am suspect of both of the people, I'm gonna chalk it up to error rather than bad intent. But I'm glad it was lower. So lower means that it's not as far off as I thought it would be, but it still shows that I'm retaining. So when the doctor came in, I gotta say he was extremely careful to listen to the things that I was saying, and he would even address the small concerns that I had along the way, like the little nitpicky stuff that wouldn't even necessarily address the problem, but would be just a little concern of mine, like having heard somebody say something about your bladder getting floppy, for instance, and he went in to describe what all that means. That's just one example, but he would allay my concerns as I brought them up, which was very comforting because it showed, one, that he cared about what was going on, and he cared about how it affected me. I asked him about what causes the prostate to get larger. Like, is there something that I'm doing to cause the prostate to get larger? And he said that, well, first of all, your prostate gets larger your entire life. It's one of those things that just keeps growing, I guess, like your nose or something like that. Mine must have started early. But he did confirm that that's something that just, it's gonna grow. It's gonna grow outward, and it's gonna grow inward toward where the urethra is too, to squeeze down on that little tunnel there. And the rate of growth is affected by a couple of factors that are genetic, and they're pretty sure that they're affected by some environmental or external factors, but they haven't pinpointed what those factors are. So bottom line is, he was willing to tell me that they don't know what causes it. So that was actually comforting to hear that somebody can say they don't know rather than guess, and keep me thinking they have some answers that I'm going to be looking for. He said one of the things that can cause it to grow faster than it should is cancer. But because my PSA numbers were so good, he said that's not it. He was certain that wasn't it. So that was a relief to hear too. I had already heard that my PSA was good, but to hear it put the way he put it, that it's not even something that shows up on his radar, that's very comforting. But he also talked about how the fact that growth itself is not the only concern that you may have, that there are sometimes little protrusions on the inside of the prostate that can be like a flap covering the exit to the urethra, so that you get like a flapper in a toilet that's holding the water in. And you know, the only way to really know what's causing this is to go in and take a look. So he talked about that procedure, which is called a cystoscopy. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun. They're gonna have to take a catheter with a camera on the end and insert it into the urethra all the way up through the prostate and into the bladder. While going through, they will look for signs of pinching, flaps, or scarring on the inside of the urethra wall as it goes through the prostate. And then once they get the camera up into the bladder, it also has the ability to inject saline solution, and they'll fill it to about 500 milliliters, I think he said, and see how the bladder responds to the liquid being at a certain level to judge what the internal part of the bladder is doing. He talked about they can look at some of these things with an MRI, but they can't see what they would need to see for this type of procedure to be able to really determine what's going on in certain parts of the prostate and what's going on in the inner part of the bladder. That's the purpose of doing the cystoscopy. It's a tough one to say if you're not used to it. And as much as I am not looking forward to the idea of having that done, I scheduled it because I want to know. I want to know what's going on. Because I mean, I've been talking to you guys, and it's important that I find out if this is something that I caused or if this is something that I just had. Everything so far is leading me to believe that it's something that I've been dealing with for a long time, but that the symptoms didn't become evident until the prostate started to flare up. A problem with the bladder that wasn't apparent because the prostate didn't help make the symptoms clear for the bladder. And that's kind of something he hinted at as a possibility, which makes a lot of sense, especially when you add the fact that we talked about another possibility is that I had prostatitis, which is a temporary swelling of the prostate. You know, mine started to seem like it get a lot larger earlier this year than it is now. And the only thing I really did was do a lot of iodine supplementation since then. And he did suggest that possibly the iodine supplementation had an effect in reducing prostatitis. But there's no way to know, possibly now at all, whether or not that's the case. But it is good supplemental evidence to consider. So, even though all of my questions aren't answered, I was treated with dignity and respect, and I felt like we were working on the same team together to find an answer. I didn't feel like I was just being processed like cattle, and that's comforting. And I know that that's what we would all hopefully expect from a doctor. And if you're not getting that from your doctor, if you feel like you can't speak your mind or ask questions or voice your concerns, you need to find another doctor. Most of these doctors don't seem to really have a lot to offer us anyway. But if their attitude is wrong on top of that, what are you going to do? But apparently people line up to see some of these doctors. Sent in, filled with medicine, charged, and sent on their way. You know, the end result might be the same for me, but at least it'll be a process of discovery and not just something that happened to me. Well, that's all I got to say about that today. I'll let you guys know how it goes when I get some more information. Until then, keep on keeping on. I'll see you next time.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?